Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. In this poem, inshallah, we'll be analyzing the poem Holy Thursday from Songs of Experience. Is this a holy thing to see in a rich and fruitful land? Babes reduced to misery, fed with cold and useless hand. Is that trembling cry a song? Can it be a song of joy? And so many children poor. It is a land of poverty. And their sun does never shine, and their fields are bleak and bare, and their ways are filled with thorns. It is eternal winter there. For wherever the sun does shine, and wherever the rain does fall, babe can never hunger there, nor poverty the mind appall. Okay. So the first stanza. Is this a whole thing to see? Holy thing to see? In a rich and fruitful land, babes reduced to misery, fed with cold and useless hand. William Blake wrote two poems called Holy Thursday. One appears in Songs of Innocence and the other in Songs of Experience. Later, Blake published both collections together as Songs of Innocence and Experience, in which he said showed the two contrary states of human soul. In the whole book, Songs of Innocence and Experience, William Blake used to say that this book shows the two contrary states of human soul, the innocent, hopeful view of childhood, and the more critical experience view of adulthood. सही है जी. So, in a way, you can say that the Songs of Innocence, the first ideology is being highlighted, yani ki the innocent, hopeful view of childhood, and in the Songs of Innocence, the latter one is being highlighted, yani ki the more critical experience view of adulthood. In the Innocence version, the speaker describes an old London tradition. From the 16th century, the London had charity schools for orphaned and poor children. On Holy Thursday, a Christian day during Easter week that remembers the Last Supper, these children would march to St. Paul's Cathedral for a church service. The speaker in this poem, yani ki the first one, the Songs of Innocence one, feels moved and happy watching the children walk to church and sing hymns. The children seem pure and sweet. The speaker says that the people who are more fortunate should show kindness and compassion to the poor. However, the experience version of Holy Thursday, ये वाला जो हम पढ़ रहे हैं, presents a very different opinion. The speaker asks angrily, is this a holy thing to see? In a rich and fruitful land, babes reduced to misery, fed with cold and useless hand. Here, the speaker questions whether it is right or holy that children suffer in a rich country like England. Instead of praising charity, the speaker criticizes society. They argue that children should not be poor, hungry, or abandoned in the first place. ऐसी नौबत ही क्यों आए कि उनको charity देनी पड़े? So the poem also criticizes the charity institutions. Although they give children food, shelter, and basic education, they do so with a cold and useless hand. Useless का क्या मतलब होता है? This means that they show little real kindness, and also they expect something in return, such as public gratitude. जैसे कि हमारी वाह वाह हो. Just like nowadays, when people do some charity, they bring it on social media or digital media. So the church service may therefore be a way for the rich to show off their generosity rather than truly helping the children. With this, we move on to the second stanza. Is that trembling cry a song? Can it be a song of joy? And so many children poor, it is a land of poverty. In the second stanza, the speaker continues asking angry rhetorical questions. In the earlier Innocence poem, the speaker enjoyed hearing the charity school children singing beautiful hymns. But in this poem, the speaker questions whether their singing is really joy. Is that trembling cry a song? Can it be a song of joy? The speaker clearly believes the answer is no. The children are not happily singing. Instead, they are likely singing because they have to, showing gratitude to the people who care for them so they can receive food and support. The speaker hears fear and sadness in their voices, not happiness. The speaker also repeats the word land to emphasize an important point. If so many children are poor, then England cannot truly be a rich and fruitful land. Instead, the speaker says it is a land of poverty. This shows the contradiction. England has great wealth, yet yet many children are still suffering and poor. ये तो contradictory statement हो गया. How is it wealthy then? The speaker suggests that England is not only literally poor in how it treats children, but also morally. A country that truly had kindness, generosity, and wisdom would not allow so many children to live in misery. The poem also focuses on Saint Paul's Cathedral, where the charity children gather. Blake disliked the strict, orderly style of the church because he believed it represented a world that values cold logic and control instead of emotion, imagination, and compassion. In this way, the cold charity given to the children reflects a cold and uncaring view of society. With this move, we move on to the next stanza. And their sun does never shine, and their fields are bleak and bare, and their ways are filled with thorns. It is eternal winter day. In the third stanza, the speaker's tone becomes more serious and prophetic, like a biblical prophet warning people to change their behavior. Instead of just expressing anger, the speaker describes the vision of the children's life as sad and hopeless, like walking through a lonely wilderness. The poem repeats the word and at the beginning of several lines. And their sun does never shine, and their fields are bleak and bare, and their ways are filled with thorns. This repetition would come under both anaphora and polysyndeton and makes the suffering feel heavier and continuous, as if each line adds another problem to the children's life. The speaker suggests that these children are almost abandoned by society. Their lives are described as dark, empty, and painful. The phrases their sun and their fields show that the children live in their own land of poverty. While richer people may experience England as a good place, these poor children experience it as harsh and miserable. So the poem also suggests that nature itself feels wrong. The children seem to live in an eternal winter where there is no warmth or hope. This shows that England's cruel treatment of poor children is unnatural and morally wrong. This brings us to the final stanza. For wherever the sun does shine and wherever the rain does fall, babe can never hunger there nor poverty the mind afford. At the end of the poem, the speaker uses strong, repeated sentence structure to make their point. For wherever the sun does shine and wherever the rain does fall, ये क्या है? Parallelism, यानी कि repeated structure. Okay, so the speaker means that any place where the sun shines and rain falls should have enough resources for everyone to live well. So nature already provides what people need. So if children are poor and hungry in England, it means that society has distributed wealth unfairly and is acting against the natural order. The poverty in society is not only a physical problem but also a moral and intellectual problem. It shocks and offends the human mind because people should know better and treat others with kindness. The last two lines also repeat ideas from the beginning of the poem. Earlier, the speaker talked about babes reduced to misery. Now they say babes can never hunger there. This repetition shows how society could correct its mistakes and create a world where children do not suffer. Even though this poem criticizes the earlier Innocence version of Holy Thursday, both speakers agree on one thing: the children themselves are innocent, valuable, and deserving of respect. The ceremony at St. Paul's may not truly be holy, but the children are holy. In a way, the poems may show two feelings in the same mind: kind sympathy for the suffering children and anger at the society that allows them to suffer. With this, we move on to the themes that are present in this poem. There are two themes. Number one is child poverty and society's failure. So William Blake's Holy Thursday from Songs of Experience criticizes England for allowing children to live in poverty while pretending to be charitable. The poem describes poor orphan children singing in St. Paul's Cathedral during a religious event. Instead of seeing this as a beautiful or holy moment, the speaker thinks it is wrong and shameful that so many children need charity in a rich country. The speaker argues that the charity schools help children only in a cold and limited way, and the people who support them mainly want to feel good about themselves rather than solve the real problem of poverty. The next theme is society versus nature. The speaker says that in a fair and natural world, children would not be poor or hungry. Kyun? Because nature provides enough for everyone and people should share with kindness. But in England, many children live in poverty because society is unfair and selfish. This shows that the country's social system goes against the natural order. Okay, the social system goes against the natural order and the human compassion. With this, we move on to the literary devices that are present in this poem. The first one is rhetorical question. The poem Holy Thursday kicks off with a series of furious rhetorical questions. Is this a holy thing to see? In a rich and fruitful land, babes reduced to misery, fed with cold and useless hand. Is that trembling cry a song? Can it be a song of joy? So the implied answer to each of these questions is absolutely not. The sight of countless orphans making their way to church is anything but holy, the speaker feels. It's downright unholy and unnatural, a condemnation of a society that creates so many abandoned and impoverished kids in the first place. The next question put readers in the scene alongside the speaker listening to the children singing a hymn in church. Their trembling cry, the speakers imply, is no song of joy. It might as well be a wail of despair. Not only do these rhetorical questions conjure up the speaker's outraged tone, but they also put this poem in conversation with its predecessor, yani ke Innocence Wali poem. In Blake's earlier take on Holy Thursday, which appears in Songs of Innocence, the speaker is perfectly charmed by the sight of all those sweet children singing in church. This speaker is clearly responding to that one. They don't even bother to describe the children. The first speaker has already done that. They simply burst out in a tirade against all that the original speaker found so touching, undermining the foundations of that innocent first impression. The second literary device is allusion. Holy Thursday refers to three things at the same time: a Christian holiday, a London tradition, and another poem by William Blake. So, Holy Thursday is the Thursday before Easter and remembers the Last Supper. In the 18th and 19th centuries, children from London charity schools for orphans and abandoned kids wore their best clothes and walked in a parade to St. Paul's Cathedral for a church service. Blake wrote another poem called Holy Thursday in Songs of Innocence. ये तीन चीजें होंगी. So in that poem, the speaker happily describes the children and their beautiful singing. The speaker tells people to be kind and show pity to the poor. However, there is a hidden irony in that poem as well. Even though the children look sweet, it is still sad that so many orphans are marching in the streets. In this poem, Blake focuses on that darker truth. The speaker questions how such a sad situation can be called a holy sight. The next literary device is metaphor. The speaker imagines the lives of the orphan children as if they are walking through a dark, cold, and empty land where the sun never shines. The fields are bare, the paths are full of thorns. It feels like endless winter with no comfort at all. ये सारे क्या हैं metaphors हैं. This picture shows how miserable the children's lives are. It suggests that the way society treats these children is unnatural and wrong, like a damaged landscape where nothing works as it should. The cold sky and empty fields also symbolize a life without love or kindness. Although the charity schools give the children basic things like food and shelter, they do not give them real care, warmth, or sympathy. The next literary device is parallelism. Parallelism helps to create the speaker's dark, thunderous tone. Listen, for instance, to the ringing anaphora in the third stanza. And their sun does never shine, and their fields are bleak and bare, and their ways are filled with thorns. So these relentless ands, which are also an example of polysyndeton, make the children's dilemma feel overwhelming. The sky and the earth and the thorny path offer them no comfort. The whole world around them is bleak and cruel. The speaker sounds like a biblical prophet rather than just someone criticizing society. The children's suffering is described like a long, painful journey through a harsh desert, similar to the journey in the Bible's Exodus. By repeating similar sentence patterns, the speaker strongly emphasizes that this suffering is very wrong and that society should feel ashamed for allowing it. The next and the last literary device is repetition. The poem uses repetition to show the speaker's shock and anger at how London acts hypocritically and ignores real suffering. At the start, the repeated use of the word land points out that although England seems rich and full of resources, it is really a land of poverty, rich in wealth but poor in kindness and generosity. Lines like, "Is that trembling cry a song? Can it be a song of joy?" These lines show the speaker's disbelief. They are basically saying, "Call that wail a song. It's clearly not joyful." The repetition makes the anger and irony even stronger. So the children must sing for their supper, pretending to be happy and grateful, but they are still living in poverty and without love. Using polysyndeton, Yankee repeated, and the speaker piles up their suffering, and their sun does never shine, and their fields are bleak and bare, and their ways are filled with thorns. Each and adds another burden to show how miserable the children's lives are. At the end, the speaker repeats the idea of babes to stress the urgency. For wherever the sun does shine and wherever the rain does fall, babe can never hunger there nor poverty the mind appall. This shows that while children are reduced to misery, now in a just world, no child should ever go hungry. The repetition links the beginning and end, highlighting the need for society to fix these wrongs. Okay, with this we move on to the form, meter, and rhyme scheme present in this poem. So let us first talk about form. Like many poems in Blake's Songs of Innocence and Experience, the Holy Thursday looks simple. It has four short stanzas of 4 lines each, and its rhythm and rhyme make it feel a bit like nursery rhyme. But unlike most nursery rhymes, this poem is angry and critical. Blake uses this simple form to make his point clear. England is failing its children, and even a child could see how wrong it is. Meter. The poem uses a strong driving rhythm with four stressed beats per line. It doesn't stick to a regular metrical foot, but the steady beats gives the poem a marching, forceful feel. Is this a holy thing to see in a rich and fruitful land? Okay, so this rhythm makes the poem sound like an angry political nursery rhyme, matching the speaker's rage and sorrow for the suffering children of London. Let us now move on to rhyme scheme. The rhyme scheme changes slightly throughout the poem. For example, the first stanza follows an A-B pattern, giving a strong, punchy feel. The second stanza uses A-B-C-B or even slant rhymes like joy and power. These simple rhymes make the poem feel like a folk song, but the mixture of patterns also gives it a slightly rough, uneasy feeling, just like the speaker's voice, breaking with anger at the false charity and suffering he feels. With this, we end the analysis. If you've got any questions, please feel free to ask. Thank you.